Welcome into the Behind the Frenzy podcast. I'm Dean Holzwarth. This is Andy McDonald. We are coming to you live from the sports department archives room today, so a little different spot here.
It's definitely a different setting. Some of these tapes probably date back to, I don't know, well before I was born, that's for sure.
Yeah, but apparently there's a big presidential
debate going on
today.
And so they switched us up on our spot.
Yeah, so we are just in this little room doing this. So thank you for joining us. First of all, we are going to talk about some takeaways from Week 6. We are into Week 7 now. 3 more weeks, Andy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, some games last week. Byron Center had a tough game against Muskegon Reese Puffer, able to pull out a 42-28 win.
Sure.
I think that game was tied.
It doesn't really surprise me, honestly, with kind of what we had coming in and what we thought would happen in that game.
Yeah, Landon Tungate accounted for 5 touchdowns in that win, so he's really played well the last couple weeks after kind of struggling.
This is the time of year you want to do it, too. That's for sure. Start getting ramped up for those playoffs.
Yep. Rockford had a big bounce-back game after back-to-back losses there. Obviously very surprising, but they beat Caledonia.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good for them to get back on track. I mean, after not losing a regular season game for as long as they did, especially to a couple of teams they did that I don't think anybody really expected them to lose to. It was definitely important for them to get back on track. And Caledonia may not be the force they were the past couple of years, but still a good team to beat, good program.
Yeah, very young. A lot of sophomores on that roster, and I think Caledonia is going to be really good here in the next couple of years.
For sure.
Moving forward.
No question about it. I mean, they should get back on track to where they were the past couple seasons.
So with 3 weeks left, Andy, we really have conference races kind of coming down to the wire here.
They do.
Some conferences have 2 games left. Some have 3. We're going to look at some of the races kind of shaping up as we go here.
For sure.
So first of all, let's talk about OK Gold. Unity leads by a game over Zeeland East and Zeeland West. Speaking of that, Zeeland East with a big win over South Christian last week.
No doubt. It's another surprise. I mean, as much as we've talked about Carson this year and how good he's been this season, I don't think anybody expected them to lose back-to-back games this year just with him at quarterback. But huge win for them. That race is completely up in the air. And honestly, if you wanted to ask me who I think was going to win it, I don't know if I could tell you who I think is going to win it. But Unity does seem to have a hold on it. It's just with the way it's been this year, we've talked about it many times. There's so many upsets this year compared to years past, it feels like. So really anything could happen, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think Danny Brown would agree that probably that defense has to show up a little bit, especially as we kind of go into the postseason here. And they're going to get a big test this week. They play Uni Christian. And it was not one of our spotlight games, but I think one that Jack kind of looked at. However, that's a big game for South Christian.
There's so many games to pick from this week with the conference races that we're about to dive into. So that game is definitely worthy of it, and definitely one of I think the people that follow both those teams are looking forward to.
What do you expect out of that game? I think that's a game where, obviously Unity's been playing really well, running the ball well, beating teams by quite a bit, and the South team can strike at any time offensively, but can they stop Unity on defense?
I think it's stopping the run is so key. I mean, I think it sets up everything else for the rest of their offense, and if they can't do that, then they're going to have a hard time getting anywhere in this game, I think. So, yeah, definitely not an easy task to have come up after the past couple weeks for them. But I think that if they can stop the run, that will help them a lot in this game.
OK Silver. We haven't talked about OK Silver a lot. Belding and Hopkins right now share the top spot at 4-0, 5-1 both overall, and they will actually face each other in the last game of the season.
For sure.
So that could be for that conference championship.
I mean, and those two schools are familiar with each other, so that's a game that you already can circle on the calendar going into the season, kind of expected to probably mean something towards the end. So, yeah, definitely expected both those teams to be right there at the end.
Yep. OK Green, Mona Shore stayed unbeaten last week, kind of have a firm hold on first place. They can wrap up a share of the conference title by they play Union this week.
Should be.
So yeah,
should be a win for them.
Yeah, so they should stay unbeaten this week. 1 game lead over Byron Center and Muskegon.
Any opponent can do anything, but it's tough for Union right now. They obviously they were on an uprise. They're trying to figure things out again there. So, but I still expect them to go in there and give it everything they got. With everything on the line, it's hard to imagine them pulling off a win. Yeah,
and it looks kind of a fight for second place with Byron Center and Muskegon, and those two teams actually play next week, so it'll be a big one.
No doubt, yeah. And Muskegon is actually a team I wanted to ask you about a little bit. Just obviously they play Reese Puffer. coming up this week. I mean, that's like kind of a big game for them because their playoff streak's on the line a little bit. So.
It is. I mean, it's been, I think, a couple decades now, consecutive playoff appearances, and they don't, like we talked about last week, they don't play in week 9.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've had 2 weeks this year where they haven't had a game. So, really weird season for them. But, I mean, they got the win last week, obviously, over Union. But it's just, this game is massive, and I don't really know what to expect. I mean, coming in the season, if you would ask me if Muskegon would have beat Reese Puffer, every time I've ever covered that game in the past, it's been easy for Muskegon, so I would have told you they would have won. And right now, I think Reese Puffers, they know they want that win. It's been a long time since they've gotten that win.
Yeah.
So I expect it to be tough for Muskegon, but we'll see what they can do.
And Reese Puffer, as we kind of mentioned earlier, they played well. You know, obviously hanging with Byron Center last week. I watched them against Caledonia. I think that game was tied at halftime. So, you know, Reese Puffer is not going to be a team that's going to be easy for them.
They always seem to be competitive. It's just about getting over the hump for them, for sure.
Yep. And so let's talk about our spotlight games. This week we have, I think, the marquee one is Northview and Catholic Central. And in doing a little research, Andy, with this pod, 1977 was the last time that Northview started the season 6-0.
That's crazy. I mean, we've talked about them plenty on this podcast, and it's just remarkable to see what they've done so far. But I think what everybody feels is, like, looking at their schedule, they haven't really had that big prove-it game over a power that's, like, good here every year, at least, like, recently.
Yeah.
And they haven't had that win yet, and I think this is the perfect chance for them to really prove that they are that good this year. So it's exciting for Northview. They have a great offense that I think CC will have a hard time stopping. But, again, anytime a team's coached by Todd Colster, I don't expect them to just lay down for anybody. So, and they want to pick up momentum themselves going towards the postseason. I feel like all season they've kind of been trying to figure out who they are a little bit. So this is a big game for Catholic Central too. It's the reason it's a spotlight game. I mean, it's got a lot of meaning to both teams for sure. And in the OK Black, they're both 3-0. So it's definitely a big one for who will win that conference.
Yeah, and Catholic Central defense has played much better. They had the loss to Pontiac Notre Dame Prep. Since then, they've won 3 in a row and haven't given up a lot of points. This will be their second week in a row playing an undefeated team after they beat Holland Christian last week. For
sure, yeah. It's Holland Christian's been another one of those teams we've kind of talked about. It's just a surprise here. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Catholic comes out with. But they've had a little bit of trouble at the quarterback position this year. We'll see what they can do against a team that's undefeated. And we talk about their offense plenty, but Northview can bring in the defensive side of the ball too. Yeah, Northview's offense against Catholic Central's defense. We'll see what happens with that one. No doubt. For us was Eastern and West Catholic, a key OK White matchup here. Both teams are in first place, and with this one too, winner gets a share of the conference title. Yeah, granted, they did play a difficult team from not the area to start the season, but West Catholic hasn't had 3 losses under Landon Grove yet. So this is the for them, they're trying to avoid that, and they want to prove that they are still a power in this area. They're that good of a team, so it definitely means a lot to them. Before Sills Eastern is another one of those teams we've kind of talked about here, like East Kentwood or maybe East Grand Rapids earlier in the season, that we were like, they want to prove that they're for real, that they're not just and they have 1 loss in a bigger game they played earlier this year, but they're still 5-1. I think that this is a game that if they were to get the win, they can say that they're for real. That's for sure. Yeah, and I definitely think Forest Hills Eastern has aspirations to make a deep postseason run this year after losing to South Christian late last year. Yeah, they have 4 games this year where they've scored over 30 points, so they definitely can score. They've also had 4 games they've held teams under 10 points. So they can play some defense, they can give some offense. It's really just about putting it all together in one game against some of these teams that can match them in those areas. Yep, and we know West Catholic, obviously you talked about with their offense, the ability to move the ball and put some points on the board. Yeah, no doubt. West Catholic said, they know what they like to do over there. It's been, since Landon's been there, they've been a pretty good competitive team in every game, so I expect them to be ready for this one. Yep. Okay, Red, Granville and Hudsonville. I think Hudsonville's been another team, lost their first game of the year. A little disappointing loss, I think, for them, and they've won ever since, including an upset over Rockford. I think you could argue they're the biggest surprise. I don't know if we really expected to be talking about Hudsonville like this late in the season. And it's awesome to see because, again, it's another team you want to see take it further. But when you can, beat schools like Rockford and East Kentwood, those are big wins, and they're going to be ready for this game. I mean, Granville is 3-3. It's not, but it's a deceptive 3-3. They have a good offense, and they can definitely put up some points. So I expect them to want this game. They've had some tough losses this year in close games. I always think back to that one that had like what gazillion points when it was
yep.
decided at the end there.
Yeah, first game of the year they put up 50 points and lost.
Yeah, like that's crazy.
And that's what Granville's been doing. Their offense, wing T with Jaden Terry, Easton Sadinsky, that offense is really good, but their biggest problem has been the ability to get stops on defense. And against this Hudsonville team that has so many weapons, they're going to have to do that to win.
No doubt. I mean, this is a big game for them. Obviously, they're 3-1 in conference, and Hudsonville's 4-0. So they need to get a win to pretty much stay in this race to get it. It feels like. So this is one they're going to have to be ready for, but I expect them to be. There's
been some good games between Granville and Hudsonville. Obviously rivals. In all sports, I feel like, but there's been some great high-scoring games not decide until the fourth quarter. So I think this is going to be big for both teams.
Yeah, it's awesome because, with Rockford being the way they've been in the past bunch of years, it doesn't feel like this game has been as big, but now it is, so, yeah.
Yeah, Hudsonville, I feel like they shared the title with Rockford a few years back, but it's kind of been, Rockford's been OK Red champs for several years in a row.
Sure, they're not. They're still there at the top every time. This is one of these teams have the chance to put themselves at the top and be at the top. So I'm sure this one means a lot to them. And Hudsonville can really start to pull away with it with a win.
Yes.
So.
Yep. Well, I think that's about it for this episode. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.